2, 1. The goal of the feminist movement is to deconstruct society. So when the opening opposition is too soft and too afraid to be labeled bad and to be called radicals, to be alienated by society, to make new enemies, we say as the closing government that we don't care. From the beginning of the feminist movement, as suffragists, back then feminists in the US asked for their voting rights, and they were called crazy. They were labeled as radicals. They were seen as a buffoon. Imagine if they backed down simply because of that. Would women still have voting rights? That's for you to imagine. So 2 responses for the opening opposition. The first one, the opening opposition constantly compared K-pop industry to the Hollywood industry, but there's no way K-pop is as diverse as Hollywood. Lizzo wouldn't possibly be having a career in K-pop. Hollywood, as you see it right now, is the product of feminist movement's activism since back then in the 80s. And because K-pop is a newly established industry and only recently gained recognition, only recently trending, is the correct time for us as feminist movement to enter the conversation and to oppose the misogyny inside the K-pop industry. Second response, the opening opposition's idea of supply and demand is bad. Why? Because you cannot facilitate fans' toxic demands and toxic visitations of female idols. Just because something is in high demand doesn't mean that it should always be provided. So therefore, us as the closing government, it's hard to see organic changes happening inside the K-pop industry, and that's why, as feminist movement, we believe that we should aggressively oppose the K-pop industry in order to force changes to happen. What made us different compared to the opening government? Us as the closing government will be the team that will be able to give you the correct explanations about what is the actual urgency behind this debate. The first explanation is how we would explain aggressively oppose. What we mean by that is that we want to campaign to boycott, campaign to K-pop fans to stop support, and campaign to even stop investment. What do we want to achieve by that? We want to make K-pop industry see that there's an incentive for them to change because there's demand, even from their own customer base. Exactly because the opening opposition characterized K-pop as an industry that is being driven by fans. We believe that by using their own characterization, that's how we can achieve change through our position as the closing government. What is the opening debate? Especially the opening government is actually putting the urgency in the wrong thing, which is beauty standard. We believe that beauty standard is not urgent and not exclusive. Why? Because it will exist anyway in any case. And but even if that's the case, we're still justified to go against K-pop industry. Why? We will explain the correct urgency, which is not the beauty standard itself, but how it was being upheld right now inside the industry. How's that happen? What is the process, right, for this kind of beauty standard to still continue being upheld? Companies, management companies, K-pop companies will force their idols or even their trainees to fast, to not eat, to exercise and practice so much, even to go under the knife to get surgery to change the way their looks in order to fit into certain standards. Momo said that at time when 16 is still happening, even for 1 week, she only ate ice cubes. She didn't eat at all in order to achieve the weight that was being put as a standard by her company, which is JYP. Of course, this kind of conditions is very, very stressful, right? But the nature of K-pop industry is that, like the opening opposition themselves said, that management companies are always siding with fans, right? Combining that with the fact that in South Korea, mental health issues are still being seen as taboo, female idols see little to no help from their companies or even from anyone. In that case, in order to finish or try to solve their mental health problems, and that's why this is a very, very deep problem inside the K-pop industry. Although there's idols that survive the odds, like Lhasa, who the opening opposition claims she's going against the beauty standard, she was actually rejected from her very first audition because the auditioner said that she was too ugly to be an idol. She's only lucky to be this talented. Otherwise, that wouldn't be the case, and she wouldn't have survived simply because of her hard work, just because she didn't fit into the beauty standard. What is the interest of the feminist movement, right? See that the way K-pop industry works is actually regressing women's rights. Women in Korea already has political and economic rights. Even one of them become president. But K-pop idols don't have that right? There are two things. There are objectification and sexualization that female idols have to constantly face. being a woman in K-pop is hard. Even when you don't want to, you have to use stage costume assigned by your management, regardless of whether or not you're comfortable in your clothes. You are being objectified. You are being sexualized in this way. That's when the interest of women empowerment comes in, because then we see that in such condition, female idols don't have choice. They have no other alternative, and they have to compel to standard once they become an idol, right? The second is how when they actually decide to wear more liberating clothes or other form of expression, they are going to be shunned, attacked, etc. And that's when the interest of protection from the feminist movements come in, because we want to protect these female idols from harassment. How far does the harassment that a female idol can face? They can face stalking, harassment. Even one of idol, Nancy of Momoland, is being photographed nude when she's changing, and those photos are being spread online, and that's how far harassment can go. And what do we want to achieve by aggressively opposing K-pop industry, right? We want to try to solve or at least lessen the amount of objectification and sexualization that female idols face. How? Because by aggressively opposing, we will then create an attention, and those kind of attention from K-pop fans, because you know that K-pop fans are dedicated, right? So if we as the feminist movement speak up about the misconduct that is happening in that industry, of course K-pop fans will enter the discourse, enter the conversation, and because of those discourse and conversation can create a new ideas inside K-pop fans that, their idols are actually being treated wrongly, their idols are actually being treated badly, their idols are actually need their help. And that's how then the demand from fans can actually move K-pop companies to evaluate the way they operate their industry, to evaluate the standards they put to their idol, and to evaluate whether or not they are actually advocating or protecting their idol from harassment, from aggression, and from so many different bad things. And that's how changes can actually happen in our side of the house, and also that's why the CG's motion is continuously standing, and that's why we beg to propose. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we see that the K-pop industry is very ironic, and the opposition has failed to notice that. How is it ironic? We see of how the K-pop industry is an entertainment industry, and yet their idols are dictated to only a few standards, and they cannot go outside of the standard and cannot actually express themselves. But as we know, the essence of entertainment is about how you're to express yourself from your music, how you look, how you want to behave in the camera, and how you communicate with your fans. But the K-pop industry has actually abolished that very essence of entertainment, and we condemn that irony. Now, the thing is that the opposition is also talking about how they do not wish that these female idols are to be dictated. They fight for their rights, but then what do? All they do is talk. All they do is talk, and there is no action that they provided for us on the table today. And when there is no action, we all are very familiar with that there will be no achievement to be made, there will be no result to be received. Then therefore we believe that the opposition has made a very bad stance in today's debate. Now, let us talk about the feminist movement yet again. Let us go back to the basic. Just what is exactly the goal? What is it that the feminist movement wants so much over the era that they are fighting? There are two main points: empowerment and protection of the female. Now, in the K-pop industry specifically, we the government see and analyzed that these two things is far from achieved within the K-pop industry. We see a lot of cases. For example, Hwasa, Jessie, and even inside the agency itself, the SM Entertainment, these empowerment and protections was actually not received due to how they are actually dictating these idols to actually go along with their standards, to actually limit their freedom, to actually limit their right and objectify them. as a form of object and products that they sell towards the society and towards the market. And we, the government, see this as something that is problematic. It is an urgency for the feminism movement to then aggressively oppose these industry, to actually create a change, and therefore we actually fight for the rights to create empowerment and protection for these people. Now, how we are going to create this is by making a change itself. If there is no change to be made, then how would you be able to receive all these things that has never been existing inside the status quo in the K-pop industry right now? Now, the thing is that, let us take a look at the opposition world first. We see that they are not trying to make any kinds of significant changes because of how they do not provide to us any kinds of alternatives that could actually give you those significant changes and the likelihood that it will give you success. We see that they are talking about how they are just going to softly touch the issue. They're very afraid to actually go head on head with the problem, even though they are trying to actually want to achieve the goal as well. Now, the thing is that the opposition world, the likelihood is, I will not even talk about 1%. It is 0. Why? Because it is how these kind of things is deeply rooted within the K-pop industry. Let us go back to SM Entertainment. If we take a look at SM Entertainment, it is the perfect case for us to study. But how they have shown us, the K-pop industry has deeply rooted regarding how they have undermined the essence, the values that the feminist movement is fighting for. We see how the SM Entertainment is actually dictating their female idols to actually fast for months. They can only eat and drink few mineral waters before they actually go to combat. They have to work out and work hard every single day, and they're actually being limited when they want to express themselves. For example, when they actually want to eat some snacks with their fans while drinking beer and soju, which is something that's a part of the culture in the Korean, but they cannot even express themselves according to their own rooted culture due to these rules that was imposed to them to create this image of a very cute female, for example, the thing that they are trying to dictate to their own female idols. And we see this as something yet again ironic, because we see that their idols are working in the entertainment industry and they are taking away their right, their freedom to actually express and to even actually act as a human. Simply as that, ladies and gentlemen. And we are going to oppose regarding this model itself. But then what about the government world? We are talking about how we are going to create a change. Now, how are we going to achieve that? Is only by aggressively opposing this whole Korean industry. We talk about how we are going to pressure these agencies. Remember, the opening government talked to you about how demand and supply is what is forming these kind of things, but how the OO also agrees with that. Now, let us take this to our side. The closing government sees this actually as an opportunity, but how we are going to actually reconstruct the industry itself by using this demand and supply. If they are talking about how demand is important, then it is not about how we stick to the status quo. It is about how we are going to aggressively oppose the Korean industry. We tell them, hey, SM Entertainment, for example, what we want is empowerment and protection for our female idols and not how you're dictating them. That is wrong, and that is what we demand. And if we all aggressively oppose this Korean industry, they will have to evaluate themselves. They will have to actually go along with the demand itself, because as what you said, this is about profit. Then the profit comes from us. Then let us be the one who actually direct. Let us be the one who control what kind of industry we want, what kind of K-pop we want, and therefore create a much more fair and justice, empowerment, protection, and everything that we want for the feminist movement success. That is what the government is fighting for, and I believe that you are on our side. Now, the opposition may say that it's not only the female though, it's the male as well. Well, guess what? We, the government, also think about that, because remember, feminist movement is not about how we only fight for the female. It's about how we fight for gender equality. Do not forget, that is one of our most strongest agenda in the feminist movement. And by actually creating this, we can make a repercussion starting from how we protect these female rights, then at the same time, the males will also receive these ripples. They will also be less objectified and even be abolished from those objectification. And therefore, we can actually fulfill the goals and the agenda of feminist movement more on our side. Therefore, in the best case scenario of the opposition, they will stick in a status quo, which we do not want at all. The worst case scenario, where we will regress the actual progress that we have achieved. Well, on the other hand, on our best case scenario, we will reconstruct the industry and we create a K-pop that we want, a K-pop that actually gives empowerment and protection for our female and even male, creating a better gender equality. And even in the worst case scenario, the government, well, we might create a little bit turbulence in the industry, but guess what? We don't care, because that will give urgency, and those urgency will give you attention, spotlight, and it will create changes. At the very least, we receive what we want, protections and empowerment. Thank you.